I love when, I don't want to say when we don't compare notes, but when we don't compare notes and then our teachings kind of weave their way into each other. And so when you said that about the desert and the Midbar, I thought, well, you didn't see the Bamidbar Rabbah that I was going to teach, but it's inside of that. Because we just are ending this journey from the desert between Pesach and Shavuot, the 49-day journey where we have escaped slavery and we're on our way somewhere we don't yet know. We don't know where we're headed. And we have counted as a community 49 days until Shavuot this week, when many of us taught words of Torah because we arrived at Mount Sinai. And just an aside, who here has ever been to the actual Mount Sinai? A few of us. So when I was in rabbinical school, it was all the rage. Everybody wanted to go and see the actual Mount Sinai. And so we traveled down into the Negev desert and then crossed over into the Sinai desert. And then you get into a taxi on the other side, on the Egyptian side. And we were an Egyptian taxi and we said, we want to go to Mount Sinai. This is way before Uber. So the Bedouin taxi pulls over at the side of the road and a Bedouin family emerges and they open the door and they said, are you here to find Mount Sinai? And I said, yes, we're a bunch of Reform rabbinical students looking for Mount Sinai. But they didn't speak English. They spoke a little bit of Hebrew and they spoke Arabic. And so between the few words, they took us to Mount Sinai, which was in their backyard. Now it turns out, location, their cousin came by that night and said, that's not Mount Sinai, you should come to our side because that's where Mount Sinai is. And everybody thinks that Mount Sinai is in their backyard in the Sinai desert because nobody knows where Mount Sinai is. Because it's a very silent and still place. It's not dead, it's full of life. But I loved that notion that the Torah itself was given not in the land of Israel, a land that has a lot of conflict in terms of the land, but it was given in the Sinai desert, and nobody knows where Mount Sinai actually is. And so what it says in Bamidbar Rabbah is, God spoke to Moses in the desert of Sinai. Why in the desert of Sinai? An interpretation of, and God spoke to Moses, whoever does not make him or herself hefker, or ownerless, like a desert, is not able to acquire wisdom and Torah. So it says in the desert of Sinai, we acquired the greatest gift of our people, the Torah. So in fact, nobody could go into the land of Israel and say it was given in this tribe's land or it was given in that tribe's land. The Torah is for everyone. And the way that in Nassau we link that is because we gave this beautiful blessing to you and Noah, a blessing that we give to children when they receive their Jewish names, the priestly benediction, and we give it to couples under the chuppah, and we give it every Friday night, Yevarecha, to children, to bless them with Shabbat. And I wanted to read you this description about the Birkat Kohanim, which I think is a great blessing to us. It's from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. He says, protection, grace, and peace, these are God's blessings communicated by the priests. And he uses the word communicated by the priests because it's not that the priests are blessing the people, it's that the priests are the conduits. Like the rabbis, the cantors, the priests, and each one of us, each one of you, can be a conduit for this blessing to another human being. So Nassau teaches, because it's about the census and about being lifted up, that it's not just for the quote-unquote holy people, the leaders, the spiritual leaders, to be the blessers, but that every single person in the community has to take on that charge, that responsibility. And he said, what are we praying for? If you seek to understand a people, look at its prayers. The Jewish people did not ask for wealth or power. They did not hunger after empire. They had no desire to conquer or convert the world. They asked for protection, the right to live true to themselves without fear, for grace, the ability to be an agent for good in others, and peace, that fullness of being in which each of us brings our individual gifts to the common good. That is all our ancestors prayed for, and it's still all we need. And that made me think about this beautiful teaching from Rabbi Shai Held, who published an article actually in the New York Times about this very moment where our prayers are about empathy and about priests, about empathy and peace, our prayers for liberation, for our own liberation and all people. And what he wrote was, the Bible's emphasis on empathy is particularly poignant in this agonized moment when Israelis and Palestinians, two utterly traumatized peoples, are so overcome with grief and indignation that they can barely see each other at all. And yet there is to one day be a different sort of future in the blood-soaked Holy Land. Both peoples will need to do precisely that, to hear each other's stories and histories, to live to and bear witness to each other's suffering. The revolution in empathy I'm describing is urgently necessary to remember precisely now, when it seems so completely out of reach. So completely out of reach. And that's what it feels like right now in these moments, that we don't know how to reach that place of peace, but we know how to pray. So this week's Yivarecha gives us that threefold blessing, 3 words, 5 words, 7 words that are so simple that we blessed you with. May God keep you safe. May God guard you from anything that is harmful to you. And Rashi teaches then, it says, not just your material life, but your spiritual life. May you be protected in your spiritual life, and may you take it seriously. And then finally, may the presence of God be a light to your life. And I think it's also, if there was a 4th line, it would say, now you, people, you be that for one another. And I'm going to end now with something that comes from another culture that describes the Midbar. It's so beautiful. It's a Dakota geography by Kathleen Norris. And she mirrors what we know about the desert and simplicity and emptiness and wholeness. She says, here, Great Plains of Dakota, the eye learns to appreciate slight variations, the possibilities inherent in emptiness. It sees that the emptiness is full of small things. A person is forced inward by the spareness of what is outward, invisible in all this land and sky. Maybe seeing the plains, or the desert, the Midbar, is like seeing an icon. What seems stern and almost empty is merely open, a door into some simple and holy state. Amen.